So basically, one of the there's so many reasons contributing to why writing is often unpleasant for people, right? But we're just going to zoom in on one of those factors today. And one of the things that I see beginner writers doing is they're getting their motivation from something external or outside themselves. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to my podcast, Write with Chloe. I'm so excited for today's topic, which is all about how to make writing pleasurable. This is one of the biggest things I see beginner writers facing, is that they just find writing deeply unpleasurable. And so today is all about how do we make it pleasurable. So if you don't know me, I am an award-winning author, and my debut memoir, The Girls, was published in 2019, and would you believe actually won or got shortlisted for 3 national awards. It was hectic, so insane, and really like my lifelong dream coming true. And now I help other aspiring authors become published authors and enjoy the process whilst only writing for 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So welcome. So today's topic, how to make writing pleasurable. So basically one of the there's so many reasons contributing to why writing is often unpleasant for people, right? But we're just going to zoom in on one of those factors today. And one of the things that I see beginner writers doing is they're getting their motivation from something external or outside themselves, which is to say something that they don't really have control over. And this is usually publication. They want to win a competition, their book published, or they want to get an agent, or they want their mum to be proud of them because their book is sold in the bookstores at airports, or they have a dream of seeing their name on the spine of a book. Whatever form it takes, right? All of these things are coming from something outside of the self, and it's something that you don't really have complete control over, right? Also, to be honest, all of these things are possible, but they take time. They're not something that you can achieve in a single day, let alone a single writing session, right? And so there is often this feeling of like, when am I going to get there? When am I going to get there? When am I going to get there? Or how long is this going to take? How long is this going to take? This is taking too long, over and over. And so the sort of prevailing feeling when sitting down to write is almost frustration, or like disappointment, or even anger sometimes, right? Because it's like, why haven't I achieved my goal? Will I achieve my goal? When will I achieve my goal? And so on. But one of the biggest shifts that helped me stop, I guess, almost giving my power away with writing and finding a way to make the motivation come from within, or basically self-source my own motivation, which also, side note, means you don't have to rely on like discipline as much anymore. Yeah, so one of the ways I started to find this sort of internal motivation was to shift what the goal of my writing was, or to shift the way that I was receiving rewards from my writing. Okay, so what does this mean? So for me, basically what happens is like my biggest value in life is growth. Literally, it's growth and learning. And so every time I sit down to write, because of the way that I write and even the way that I teach my students writing, what usually happens is that I'm learning something about myself or the world around me. My writing has a lot of inner work in it, and to be honest, even when we are writing about events and situations outside of ourselves, I personally do believe that writing is, the best tool for self-inquiry. Really, if I'm honest, that self-inquiry is the ultimate form of activism, right? I honestly think that writing memoir is almost a political act because it leads you ever closer to radical self-responsibility, right? And so bearing in mind all of that, right? That's the lens that I'm writing through, and the lens through which I then teach others to write, even though it might not be overt on the page, right? I don't write self-help. None of my students are writing self-help. This is all happening behind the scenes, right? It's like subtext, but most of them are just writing memoirs about the time they traveled around whatever country, or fiction about, navigating having an autistic child, or whatever it is, right? All of this stuff is happening below the scenes for the reader anyway. But for the writer, as they're writing their scenes, memoir, fiction, whatever it is, with all of this that I just shared in mind, what is happening is they're having epiphanies, or they're seeing themselves in a new light, or they're understanding something deeper about the way their own psychology or emotional reality or spirituality, whatever it is, works, right? And so every time they sit down and write, they're getting a new little piece of clarity about a question that they've been sitting with and unable to solve, often for years, right? So every time they sit down, they get a little bit more clarity, and then they get, a ping of whatever, I don't know the names of all those good chemicals and hormones, but ping of that, right? And so it becomes like self-motivating, and then you no longer need like discipline when you're making your main goal something that is A, outside of yourself, and B, really far away, right? Really far away. It often takes people 10, if not 20 years, right, to get their first book published. Don't accidentally write a book that no one wants to read except for your mum. So how do we produce writing that people can't stop reading? Well, we write from the body or intuition or soul, not from the head or intellect, which is where most beginner writers write from unless they know better. My membership, Write from the Heart, teaches you exactly this. How do we write from the body or soul or intuition in order to produce work that has great psychological nuance and depth and that readers just can't put down? We get together online once a week. I give you a magic prompt to help you do so. We do a little bit of hot seat coaching to work through some of the struggles. And then in between, you get access to a library of more than 20 videos explaining every step of the process and mindset shifts needed to write a beautiful first draft of a book that people can't put down. You can join the first week for free. Just use the code Chloe at the checkout. And so when we make growth and learning the goal, it means that we can almost get a hit of our like drug effectively every single time we sit down to write, i.e. every single day. And so we no longer need to rely on discipline. And what happens when you start to make this change where you're getting a reward every single time you're, doing the work, right? As in producing new words. What happens when you're getting a reward every time you sit down and write is that slowly writing starts to become pleasurable. Like it literally just starts to become pleasurable. It's like, because instead of now thinking about the meal you're going to eat in a month's time and not eating up until a month's time, but having to like do work for the food like every day, but never actually getting any of the food and just waiting for that one meal in a month's time. It's like now you're like, every time you're doing work, you're getting a snack, you're getting a reward. So you don't have to wait until that end goal because you're getting a reward every single time you sit down and write. And so the way that we do this is, instead of thinking that we're writing to educate others or we're just writing to tell a story, what we do instead is to ask ourselves, what is eating me alive? What is eating me alive to the degree that I can't stop thinking about it as I'm sitting on the toilet or waiting for a bus or trying to go to sleep? If you actually sit with this question, like genuinely sit with this question, not just give it 2 seconds of thought right now. If you actually sit with this question, your body will tell you. There will be something or multiple things that you will start to notice you're obsessed with. And sometimes it's like something that you're trying to solve, or something that you're trying to understand, or something that you're trying to make peace with, something that you're trying to let go of or release from the past. It can take all different forms, right? Sometimes it's just something that like really lights you up and gets you super excited. Find that thing, turn it into the format of a question, so not a statement, into a question, and then write towards that question as a way of educating yourself rather than as a way of educating the reader. So for example, my first book, The Girls, on the surface, right, it's not a self-help book at all, but on the surface, it's like, oh, Chloe lost 2 sisters in a car accident when she was 17, and this book chronicles the 5 years of drug, sex, rock and roll that followed after the loss of her 2 sisters, and we follow her through these various countries and relationships, and it's a wild ride of grief. But if you actually look beneath that plot narrative, the book was actually me asking, how do I learn to communicate with my mother? That's it. How do I learn to communicate with my mother? And all of those like crazy rides and adventures and events and blah, blah, blah that came after the accident, they were really just the backstory. Because every time my mother and I tried to communicate openly and honestly, they were like the invisible things that were sitting in between us and blocking our communication. Not overtly, subvertly, right? And so the book overtly was about the accident and the years that followed and the adventures and blah, blah, blah. But beneath it, and where I was getting the internal motivation to write, it was me trying to solve the question of how do I learn to communicate with my mother within the context of our shared traumas, despite having hugely different worldviews, politics, and approaches to resolving trauma. And when I made that shift, writing was something that I then wanted to do every day instead of something that I had to rely on discipline to be able to do. do. So I hope that helps. And if you would like more support to figure out what it is that you should be writing about, like what is the central question in your work, how can you receive it from your body instead of your head, you're welcome to reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at write_with_Chloe, and I offer a range of coaching services helping people write and publish their first book and enjoy the process in just 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could write a review if you're watching it as a podcast, or drop a comment below if you're on YouTube. And I would love to hear from you as well, even if you just want to say hi on Instagram and let me know what you're writing. I would love to hear about it. Sending love, and I'll see you guys next episode. Bye. I just created a new membership called Write from the Heart, and I would love for you to come along and give it a try. You can use the word Chloe at the checkout and get the first week free. The reason I created this is because so many people tell me, I really want to work with you, Chloe, but I just want to get a first draft down before I come to you. And it's awkward because I kind of have to tell them that usually what happens when people do that, they end up having to throw away everything that they wrote before coming to me because they didn't realize it, but they wrote a whole first draft from the head or intellect instead of from the body or intuition and soul. And when we write from the head or intellect, the work just has no depth or nuance. And so it's not the kind of writing that people just want to devour and can't put down. To produce that kind of writing, we have to be writing from the body or intuition or soul. And so my membership, Write from the Heart, is a low cost and sort of, low level in terms of commitment way that you can start to put that into practice and learn how to write from the body. We meet online once a week. I give you guys a magical prompt to get you started. We write together in silence, and then I invite a couple of people to unmute and get some hot seat coaching about what they're currently struggling with in their writing. And then in between, you get access to a library of more than 20 videos outlining every step of the process of writing a first draft that moves readers emotionally. So check out the link and use the code Chloe to get your first week for free, and I look forward to seeing you there.